Neighborhood News. It's another Tuesday night, 7 o'clock.
Yes, Channel 95, and we are back for one more show of Neighborhood News. We would like to thank the Portuguese community. Sejam bem-vindos para mais programa da sua notícias da sua vizinhança. É terça-feira, 7 da noite, e nós estamos de volta com mais programa de notícias da sua vizinhança. E o que vai acontecer hoje é a continuação de uma conversa com representante da cidade, Mike Miozza. Fique connosco, nós temos mais show para si. And we are pretty much continue a conversation that we started last week.
We should have had it on the screen to be continued, right?
To be continued, yes.
So,
but today we have new
new topics, right?
New topics.
Yeah, and we're going to, actually, Mike, since it's a to be continued, we're going to have, we were talking last week about the charter. So I don't know if we kind of ended it to a point, but we know we have that strong mayor, weak council bit, and that was one of the things that we're looking at with the charter.
Yeah. First off, let me thank you for having me back on. It's a real pleasure to join you gentlemen today. And yes, we were talking about the charter. The charter review committee is still active. We're still out there seeking signatures, but we've kind of changed our strategy over the last few months. We've now become a ballot question committee. It's a political action committee that we filed with the state of, with Boston, with the state, and this is going to allow us to raise funds, which we were not able to do before. And the purpose why we want to raise funds is our group is a very small volunteer group. I've had some loyal people that have been with me for the last 3 years that, we've been out in front of the supermarkets, out in front of the drugstores, the Tedeschi's. We've went door to door. We've attended the political functions, the fundraisers. But because we're a small group, we're getting burnt out. It's taken its toll on us. We've got over 4,000 signatures now, but we need about another 4,000 signatures. So we said, look, we've got a lot of blood, sweat, and tears invested in this. We're not giving up on this. We truly, truly believe that this is something that is needed in our city. We are probably one of the only communities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. There's 351 cities and towns. We are probably one of the only ones, the city of Fall River, that does not have a regular review of our city charter. If you look at charters from New Bedford, from all over the Commonwealth, you will see that they have a regular review, whether it be every 7 years, every 10 years. We have no such language in our city charter. So our group wants to see a question go on the 2015 ballot as to whether or not the citizens of Fall River want to see a review of our city charter. That doesn't mean we're going to have changes. It means we're going to review our charter. Now, the other thing we do know is that the last community that's had a charter review, Newburyport, which is about 70 miles north of here, they found that they had 19 conflicts with Mass General Law with their charter. So I've got to imagine that we have probably as many, maybe more. But if that's the only thing we change, initially, and we get language in there that says we'll regularly review our charter, I think this is going to be so huge for the community. I know a lot of people are worried about what could change, and I will tell you that if we get this on the ballot, we elect a commission, you probably won't see any real change until about 2015, 2017, 10 years, probably 2019 at the earliest, that you'd really see any real change. But I think it's so important to have a regular review of our charter. I think there's many issues that people have talked to me about over the last 6 years as I campaign to be a city councilor. Whether the mayor sits on the school committee, whether the mayor's term should be 2 years or 4 years, whether we have term limits, whether the city council has legal representation, a whole host of issues. But the only way to get these things changed is through a review, a regular review of our city charter, where these things can be brought up, discussed, and then we can make those changes.
No, it makes sense.
Yes, and how's the process now? So what next? You said that you're going to be, people can vote?
Well, what we're doing is we're getting signatures on petitions. We need about 7,000, say about 7,500 what we call good signatures, registered voters of the city of Fall River. We will submit them to the election office. Once they're certified, that will put a question on the 2015 ballot as to whether or not the citizens of Fall River, they call it, do you want to frame a charter? But basically, do you want to set a charter review committee? There'll be people that'll be elected. The citizens will elect a committee, a 9-member committee that will represent the voters of Fall River, and there'll be public meetings that people will be able to go to and say, you know, this is what I'd like to see change. And that charter commission will take all those ideas, put it in some form of document, send it up to the Attorney General, who will approve it. It comes back, and then it'll go on the 2017 ballot. Whatever changes we might want to make. Now, one thing I caution people, you don't want to make a lot of changes, because it's just like our budget. You vote it all up or down, so you don't get to pick what things you want. You know, you either want the changes or you don't. So we have to be careful as we go through this process that we're not trying to eat the elephant all in one bite. We make our changes very small or few of them, because you know, if you put 10 things there, there's going to be something somebody's not going to like, and the whole thing gets voted down. So we have to be very judicious when we do this. But the problem is, as I say, is we don't have any mechanism to review our charter right now. The charter was revamped in 1934. We've not had a review of our city charter since then. It's just incredulous. And when you look at New Bedford and you look at communities around us, what they're doing, they're having a review every 7 to 10 years. It just begs that we need to do this. It's just so important. And if people want to see the mayor's term longer, or they don't want to see the mayor served on the school committee, then this is the way you do it. You do it through a charter review.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, as far as, Mike, you think with trying to acquire the signatures from people, it's not something like, you know, we're going to build a school here. This is something that, you know, you have to explain to people. Did you find that was the problem? You know?
Yeah, and that's been the challenge as we've stood out in front of, you know, supermarkets or drugstores. You know, first thing when we'll ask them, are they a registered voter forever? Once they say yes, we'll start explaining the charter. A lot of people think it's charter schools, so we have to get around that. We have to explain that the charter is the city's constitution, just like the United States Constitution, you know, lays down the law for the land. Our city charter does the same thing. It's our local government. It's our legal document that guides our governance. So once you get through all that, and then people, you know, will ask you what kind of things you know, could be changed, and you go through it. I mean, you really literally can spend 15, 20 minutes explaining it. And I have no problem doing that. Where I get a little frustrated is either somebody will tell me they're a registered voter and they'll say, I don't have time for you, so I don't have a chance to explain, or you go through all that and they still won't sign it. That, you know, and I respect, I mean, it's obviously a choice to do it. I just don't know why you wouldn't have the question go on the ballot and let people decide. But what we're planning to do with the funds is that we do raise, we're going to hire a professional signature gathering organization. I don't think I said that earlier. So why are we gathering this money? Really twofold. One is to do that, and then whatever extra monies we raise, we want to educate people on the process. What's going to happen? You know, we're going to put this question on the ballot. What does this mean? How does this affect me? And so we want to have this education so that people understand. We want to use all the media, the newspaper, the TV, you know, the government center, all the ways we can to communicate with people as to why this is a good thing. How can you get involved? How can you become one of the commissioners if you choose to do that? So we have an educational component to this as well.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. That I figured that'd be a problem. You know, that they want to go through the whole thing, and then if they hear one thing that they probably didn't like you said, it could be this. They're like, you know what? I don't want to be bothered with that.
But I don't really see any changes coming for a while. I think the first thing is let's get our charter aligned with Mass General Law first and foremost. Let's just get some language in there that says we'll review it every 10 years. So if we do that, 2017, we're not looking at it until, you know, 2027, 2029, whatever it ends up being. So yeah, there won't be any real changes, but you got to start the process somewhere. And so we're committed. We're going to get this. We're doing everything we possibly can to get this on the 2015 ballot. Because we think it's that important. This will change how Fall River operates. I say it's a historical event once we make this happen. So, and we will.
So maybe it'll be your legacy, Mike.
You know, John, if it is, I hope it is. I mean, I'd be very proud to get this on the ballot. And you know something? At the end of the day, people vote it down. Okay. I can't imagine that they would once they're educated on what this means. And if I'm able to, you know, John and Carlos, I don't want anybody ever have to go get 7,500 signatures ever again. Really.
That's crazy.
We shouldn't have to do this now, but we have to, and we'll do it. But nobody in the future should ever have to do this again.
So is, Mike, you said the folks that gather the signatures, do they have some kind of mechanism where they would explain this stuff? Is that how, you know what I mean, or they just they've done this in the past, I guess?
You mean the professional organizations?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're good at raising signatures for candidates, for governor or whatever.
okay.
So yeah, we'll give them the script, we'll give them the information, and they use targeted lists to go get the registered voter.
Okay.
So they're not wasting their time knocking on a door that may not be fruitful for them. So they told us once we raised the money, they could probably get us the signatures in about 3 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, they said it could be that quick. That's what they committed to. So. We're kind of excited about that. Our job is to raise it, and I'll be frank with you. It's going to cost us about $10,000 to do this. So we need to raise about $10,000, and I will tell you too that we've already started raising our funds. We've reached out to our elected officials, and they have been more than generous. I've been pleasantly surprised and pleased that they've been so gracious to do that. We've written a plead letter that we'll be sending out to businesses asking for their help, and hopefully there's 1 or 2 benefactors out there, somebody that has, $5,000. They may say, we believe in this cause, we get it, it's good for our city, and if we can get a couple of those, we've got the money that we need to get the rest of the signatures, and this goes on the 2015 ballot.
That's great. Great.
Yeah.
Well, it's a step in the right direction, so that's good.
I can't see why anybody would be opposed to this, John.
Yeah.
Carl.
No.
I really can't see any reason. If somebody called me, tell me why this isn't a good thing.
No, I mean, just a regular company needs to have their own rules.
Yes.
Needs to follow the
Spot on.
bylaws.
Yes.
Any organization needs to run by bylaws, and any business needs to know who's the boss.
Yes.
So that's pretty much what it is, and
Yeah.
what the rights they have. As employees or whatever. So I think it's very important.
And to your point, Carlos, I mean, bylaws get reviewed annually or every 3, 4, whatever.
Yep.
So it's the same type thing. So you are absolutely spot on with your analysis.
Supposedly bylaws it's supposed to be changed when one member changes. We need to inform, change the,
I'm thinking of, and Mike, was talking, and you're talking about the thing we have at work, SOPs, standard operating, and that's something that we have to look at every couple of years, which you're rewriting these things, and it's like, oh my God.
And I believe city government should run a lot like, maybe not exactly like business, but a lot.
Yeah.
And this is a prime example what you two guys just said, SOPs, your bylaws, same exact thing, exact thing. And it's commonplace to do that in business.
Yeah.
But for some reason, and I will tell you this, it's commonplace in Massachusetts. We're just not doing it here yet in Fall River, but we will be. We've got to do this. This is the right thing to do. We're behind the times on this, and I'm going to fight. And if this is my legacy, then I'll be proud to leave this and get this done, John and Carlos.
Very good.
Well, we were gonna, we have another big thing that's been going on. We talked about the fire department last year and the budget, but we also, I know you've been really spearheading this whole thing with the landfill and kind of pulled some stuff out of that situation. And Carlos and I were at that meeting that the DEP came down, and I think you did a good job, by the way. Very good job.
Thank you, I
were
appreciate that.
I heard a lot of people compliment you, basically saying you had the answers or you were asking these right questions. So I appreciate that as a citizen here and getting that out to us. But what do you see now? And this is just my opinion with this. I just think that the way they were talking with this whole situation is that BFI and the Jerebecs and then the city of Fall River have to come together. And they were hoping they would come together, but and I think you even asked this question: how, who's going to make them come together?
Right. Yeah.
So
because they're on the enforcement. But let me announce on your show, because this is kind of breaking news.
Okay.
We're going to have a follow-up to that meeting, John and Carlos. Okay. It will be held on April 7th. I believe that's a Monday.
Okay.
In Government Center at 6 p.m. The DEP is coming back.
Oh, excellent.
And I've invited them back, and they're going to do 2 things. There's going to be 2 goals here. One is to explain to the public the process of capping that landfill. Yeah. So it's going to be an informational meeting, and I've asked them to put the PowerPoint together to explain what is the process, what's the DEP's role in that. So that's part one. The second part of this meeting is the meeting that you referred to that State Rep Carol Fiola put together, was a great meeting, it was a great first step, but it didn't allow for the public to have any input. So the second part of my meeting is going to be allowing the public to weigh in, to ask questions that they may have wanted to ask that they didn't have the opportunity to ask. I know there were some activist groups there, there was just people from the public there, the neighborhood leaders were there, so there may be some questions that they would like to ask, and so it'll be an opportunity, and this will be a public meeting for them to ask those questions. So that's going to occur on April 7th. Now, to your question, to the point, I mean, we do have landfill, and then we have some contamination of 7 acres that's off the landfill. And one of my questions has been, who's responsible for that contamination? And when I asked the DEP that, they sent me some information that BFI had hired a environmental consultant, a firm to check into this, look into this on their behalf. And that firm determined that BFI was not responsible for the contamination that was off-site. So that leads one to believe, well, somebody obviously is the responsible party. There's only 2 entities that owned it before BFI. That was Jared Beck Disposal Inc. and the city of Fall River. As an elected official in the city, my concern was, is the city of Fall River responsible for any of this contamination? Because we did find out that there was contamination both to the surface water and to the groundwater. So I wanted to know, well, how toxic is this contamination? How far is it extended? Where's it gone? Who's responsible? Is the city responsible? Obviously, if there is, then there's a financial responsibility to the city, you know, for cleanup, for capping. So this is how this all got started. I wanted to get an understanding of the city's responsibility, if anything. Are we 50% responsible? Are we not responsible at all? It would seem to be that BFI has done their homework, and they're basically saying, we're not the responsible party, so that only leaves 2 entities. The idea, to your point, John, was that the DEP, I think, has been waiting for the parties to get together to kind of sort this out, but it doesn't seem to be happening. So my question is, at what point does the DEP interject themselves into this? You know, to me, they are an enforcement agency, regulatory agency, so at some point they've got to get the parties together and, you know, get their consultants to figure out, you know, party A is responsible, party B, 50%, 30%, 20%, you're 100%, whatever it is. But as a city official, I want to know, with the closing of that landfill coming October, you know, this is monies that we may have to put aside for capping, you know, cleanup and monitoring wells, and you have to put this money away for 30 years if you're the responsible party. So I want to know what that looks like, and I think the people of Fall River deserve to know what that looks like.
Yeah. I mean, and the way the meeting ended, Mike, they just didn't have any solution. So maybe that's something that could be asked, I guess, in, you know, in the April meeting to say, look, what's the follow-up on this, I guess.
I mean, quite frankly, that was an hour-and-a-half meeting. I know I took my fair share of the meeting, and believe me, I didn't even ask probably 30% of the questions I had prepared. But in fairness to the others in the group, I kind of backed off on my questions. But I will have an opportunity, as well as the public, to ask those questions, and the DEP is willing to take those questions. I mean, they're pretty convinced that our water supply is not in jeopardy, and that's very comforting to hear. I think that's what we needed to hear. So, you know, they'll reinforce that again, but people, if they have any concerns about Mother's Brook and how it's impacting the ecology of the Taunton River, and, you know, those type things, those would be questions that can be asked on April 7th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
And I didn't have a chance to go to the meeting, but I watched it on TV, and it seemed to me they trying to answer just enough to get over the question. They were not getting into detail. They were not, you know, it's
well,
like...
I think because it was such a short meeting, there's only, you know what I mean, I think they kind of explained the whole thing where the water is safe, but I think a lot of the other questions they just couldn't answer because I don't think they have an answer yet. You know?
Yeah, especially on the area that they call the disturbed area, the 7 acres. I'm not sure there's clarity on that. Yeah. I mean, they certainly couldn't answer my questions at this point in time because, you know, right now they're waiting for somebody to stand up and say, we're responsible, here's our plan to clean it, and then the DEP will, you know, either reject or approve that plan. So there's still a lot of questions that I have about that. I'd like to know, you know, what's the methodology? How do you determine who's responsible? You know, and then is the city going to be aggressive and say, hey, you know, we're not responsible, so is this going to go into litigation? Obviously, BFI has already carved out their position to say we're not responsible, or are they going to be able to work it out and say, look, instead of going to court 50-50, that's fine, then what's the city's responsibility? Because I think we learned, John, in that meeting, Carlos, you heard it on TV, that I think at a minimum, the cap it was like 1.5 million.
Yeah.
That's just a cap it. There's monitoring wells and there's others. So we know that if the city's 100% liable, we own that 1.5 million plus some additional cost. If we're only 50%, obviously it's half of that. But so that's kind of what I wanted to know, because to me it's part of the cost of closing that landfill. Not only are we losing our tipping fees, we're not going to be paying less than market rates for our tipping fees and our host fee as well, I meant to say. So you know, we've got to determine how we're going to be handling our trash in the future, and that's important to know if there's an additional cost that's going to be added on to the taxpayer.
You think this came up because of the closing or because of the extension that was proposed? You think that's why this came up?
I think it was a direct result of the landfill closing. I think this may have been an opportunity to extend the landfill. And my understanding, and I wasn't privy to these conversations, but you know, maybe you know, was it a case where BFI said, "Hey, we'll take care of the contamination. You allow us to expand." My understanding is the landowners, I don't think, wanted to do that because they obviously would have had to move or give up their land. I don't think it would have been good for the city, Carlos, even though, you know, we may have gotten off the hook for the contamination. I think it's time to stop kicking that can down the road. I think, you know, we've allowed communities to dump in our backyard. It's time we stand up and say enough is enough. Let's find out another method to handle our solid waste. That's just my personal belief. You know, I know there's benefits of expanding it in terms of what we're paying, but I got to remind people, we don't get free trash pickup. We pay for this in our property taxes. Yeah. You don't see a line item. Yes, we get it at a reduced rate because we got the host fees and we get less than market rate tipping fees, but it's still not coming free. Yeah. We are paying for it. Now we're going to have to pay for that difference. And there's different ways of doing that. Is it whether it's pay as you throw, whether it's going to be a property tax increase, whether there's going to be now a fee for trash pickup. I just want to make, we're going to pay for this some shape, way, or form. We just got to figure out what the best methodology is to have people pay. And that's the discussions that are ongoing right now.
Yeah.
Did you hear all the proposals already?
No, we initially had 6, Carlos. One proposal, waste management, pulled out of the discussions, and so we've heard 4 then. And on March 24th, which I believe is a Monday, it's actually next Monday, Ken Pacheco, on behalf of the city of Fall River, will be presenting his proposal for a waste transfer station, I believe at the incinerator, from what I last recollect, and we'll be hearing that proposal. That'll be the last proposal. I don't believe there's anything else that I'm aware of coming forward. So those 5 proposals will now go up to the administration for a cost-benefit analysis. We'd like them to come back and share with us what they came up with, because we're not getting any of the pricing in my committee. We decided to do that, or the administration decided that it would be wiser not to have them do that in a public forum, because, you know, it just wouldn't be fair to the people that went first or last. So, and that's fair. So they'll come back to us and look at the proposals, and maybe 2 or 3 of them get ruled out because they're just not cost effective. But maybe we end up with 2 to 3 of them, and then we kind of go from there. I'm not sure where the process is going to go from there. So whether it's pay as you throw, privatization, whatever ends up being the 1 or 2 or 3 that are best for the city, then we can kick those around.
Is the city council involved, or be involved on this?
We don't get a vote on,
of,
really, the mayor can decide on what process we go. So we don't really, from what I understand, we may not have a vote on this. Hopefully we'll have input, and hopefully the whole idea of this was to work collaboratively with the administration. That's why we're holding these public forums. I agreed to do this in my committee. I wanted people to be able to weigh in, and we've had some very good attendance. We've had good feedback at the meetings. That was my intent. I'm a big believer. I don't like to just drop this transparency. I'm a believer. I'd rather do things out in the open, have people involved, have people weigh in. No secrets, no nothing. This is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. I mean, I know at the end of the day, there's some things that, as mayor, the CEO, he has to make the decision. But that whole process, I believe, should be transparent. And that's why I was willing to do this. against some advice. Some people thought I shouldn't have been doing this, but and for their own reason, and I understand, I appreciate that, but I'm a believer in transparency. The more we do publicly, the more I believe that that's the right way to do things.
You did your job. What you think was right. Now, if the decision was a bad decision, it's nothing that you could do. You did your job. People knew what was the choices out there, and then
I know that you guys represent. You're our representatives. I get that, but sometimes people want certain things, but in the long run, it's not really the right thing to do right now. But everybody thinks it's that way. So I personally hope with the whole trash thing that they actually picked what's the most convenient and the most cost effective. Instead of just, if somebody's against this, everybody's against it in the city, that you just rule that out. And I hope that doesn't happen,
Yeah, I mean, and I hear what you're saying. I mean, I think all options should be on the table. We should do that cost-benefit analysis, and you're right. If one is not politically popular, that shouldn't be ruled out just because it's not politically. If at the end of the day it's the right thing to do, then we need to explain to people. We need to educate people. Why is this the right thing? This is why. And I think there's a lot of information on some of these. For instance, pay-as-you-throw, privatization. There's some misinformation, and so people really need to understand it. The proponents of these, the owners of these companies, they have to come and explain their proposal. I've told a couple of them I think they should go in front of the neighborhood groups, explain pay-as-you-throw, explain the privatization, so that people can ask questions. They should be doing some of that outreach, and I've encouraged all the proponents of proposals to do that, to outreach to the neighborhood, so they can understand. They can ask, when we hear about pay-as-you-throw not being, well, why? Answer their questions directly, and once I think everybody has the information, then you can make what we call an informed decision.
I still believe that pay-as-you-throw is the best option, but again, probably it's an option that you could see results in the long run. But because in the long run, that will teach you how to recycle, and that will teach you how to pay less for your trash.
I agree.
But again, it's in the long run. And that's why I still think, because I'm already on the recycling system for 3 years, I'm kind of on the other side of the fence already, that people versus people that never did it.
Yeah, because you need a behavior change. Really, when you do pay-as-you-throw, it's a behavior change. And there's some people that are really good at recycling. But to me, I mean, and I'm not going to say I'm up for any of them. I'm open-minded on all of them. I'm not against pay-as-you-throw. I see the benefits. I think it's one of those ways that, listen, we're going to have to increase fees anyway. And when I look at the options when we're increasing fees, to me, that's the one I can control. I can determine how many bags I'm going to use or not use. So to me, that's well in my control. But again, it's not politically. It's not the political solution. And so you got to be willing to, if you're the leader or a leader of the city, and eventually I will have an opinion on one of these. And if that's the one I end up, I'll be able to explain to people and look them in the eye and say, this is why I think it's best, and explain the pros and the cons of that. But I agree with you. If you're a good recycler, pay-as-you-throw is a way that you control. If you get a fee increase or you get a tax, you don't control that. You're going to get that every time, regardless of whether you recycle, don't recycle. So, education. That's what we need to do. We need to educate people.
And we have Mario telling us from the
well,
control room, and we are out of time.
I thought we had something else to talk about, but anyway.
Next week we're back again. Mike, again, thank you
Thanks a lot, Mike.
to be with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're always welcome to come back.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night.